Hi, I'm Emily Welcome.
I'm Savannah Acton.
I'm Erin Hudson.
And I'm Erica LeVay.
Today we're going to be talking about genetic engineering.
Genetic engineering is the modification of the characteristics of an organism by manipulating its genetic material.
We have researched 3 topics of genetic engineering: GM foods, cloning, and designer babies. There are much controversy between these topics.
It is also controversial whether scientists are responsible for all resulting actions pertaining to these topics.
Let's take a look at the benefits and drawbacks of genetic engineering.
Thank you.
GM foods, or genetically modified foods, are a growing industry in the modern day society. The leading crop in the United States is corn. Corn is in numerous amount of products. It's in soft drinks, candy, chewing gum, and even in our carpets. The demand of the crop is quite high in the U.S., and this causes many farmers to adjust their crop rotations. However, the corn is a tricky crop to grow without genetically modifying it. Corn cannot reproduce without the aid of humans. It's quite vulnerable to pests and diseases, and they need many nutrients to grow. With the use of GMOs, corn is much easier to grow and can reproduce at a fast rate for the ever-growing demand of the crop.
And that paints a good picture.
Mutations that occur when the DNA of a plant is tampered with can have a vast effect because 90% of the United States crops are genetically modified. These crops have cost the United States about $12 billion in subsidized lost sales and product recalls. Let's take a look at the effects that those $12 billion have gone towards. Genetically modifying crops increases pesticide and herbicide use. As tractor passes along crops have been decreased to save energy, the herbicides are the counter solution. What people don't realize is that herbicides are not helping the energy situations because herbicides use fossil fuels for manufacture. Specifically, glyphosate, an herbicide, is highly invasive and reduces soil quality by killing natural nutrients and organisms. Ultimately, the drawbacks of genetic engineering including massive energy and money consumption, and unforeseen harm to the environment outweigh the benefits some people claim they may have.
We all know what cloning is. You take one person and you make another that looks exactly the same. On December 22nd, 2001, history was made. A kitten named CC was the first cat and the first domestic pet ever to be cloned. Cece and Rainbow, the donors of Cece's genetic material. Though the cats have the same genes, they are different. Stem cells build, maintain, and repair the body throughout our lives. Because these are processes that stem cells do naturally, they can be manipulated to repair damaged or diseased organs and tissues. But stem cells transferred from one person to another are seen as foreign, and they can trigger an immune response. Some researchers are looking at cloning as a way to create stem cells that are genetically identical to an individual. These cells could be used for possibly growing whole organs for transplants. One example in farm animals such as cows, sheep, and goats are being genetically engineered to produce drugs or proteins that are used in medicine. Scientists could take cells from a cow that produces large amounts of milk and grow them in culture. If they take the nucleus from one of these cells and transfer it into a cow egg, it could develop into a cow that makes the drug in its milk. Since every cell in the cow would carry the drug gene, it could pass the gene to its offspring, creating a whole herd of drug-producing cows. This is how cloning can have a positive effect in today's society.
Well, we've all seen Jurassic Park. In all seriousness, cloning is a very new and unpredictable field. There are few benefits gained from cloning, and the psychological risks are unknown.
Some people may say designer babies should not be legal and break all moral and ethical codes. But when you consider the benefits, you can better realize the greater purpose behind designer babies. One of the firstborn designer babies was Adam Nash, who was born in 2000. His birth was not only a medical breakthrough, but for a life-saving purpose. His sister had a disease called Fanconi's anemia. If he was born naturally, he would have had this disease. When he was born, blood cells from his umbilical cord were transplanted into his sister's body, saving her from the disease. Some may say he was only created for this purpose, but because he was born, his parents now have 2 healthy kids. His birth, although artificial, served a vital purpose. Through designer babies, scientists can gain a better understanding of why disease is passed down from one generation to the other, or how defective genes develop during cell growth. Through enough research and trial and error, they will be able to find answers and possible cures. Through designer babies, the risk of medical diseases such as cancer, which is one of today's leading killers, can be reduced. It can also lower obesity, diabetes, and anemia. Clearly, designer babies serve a greater purpose.
The gene editing tool known as CRISPR has catapulted itself into scientific laboratories and headlines over the past few short years. Fast on its heels is the profoundly consequential controversy. Should these new techniques be used to engineer the traits of future children who would pass their altered genes on to generations to follow? The positive part of the 1997 movie Gattaca is Ethan Hawke and Jude Law. The negative part is the society in which the genetically enhanced are perceived to be biologically superior and highly respected. This creates new social classes for those who have traits that are desirable and those who have traits that are undesirable. The kinds of social changes they foresee, once set in motion, could be as difficult to reverse as the genetic changes that took place. There's also the controversy in the fact that the children whose genes are edited have no consent. By all accounts, far too much is unknown about issues such as unintentional edits to the genome, persistent editing effects, genetic mechanisms in embryonic and fetal development, and longer-term health and safety consequences. The embryo screening technique, called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, or PGD, is a widely available procedure used alongside with vitro fertilization. PGD raises social and ethical concerns about the kind of traits that should be selected or deselected. These questions are particularly important in the disability rights perspective. But screening embryos for disease is far safer for resulting children than engineering new traits with germline gene editing would be. And last but not least, there's the current issue of overpopulation. With these designer people who live longer and have more children, that adds to the already rapid growth of the human race. This loops us back around to the pro-GMOs producing enough food for our population.
And that's all we have for you today.
Now you are educated on the pros and cons of genetic engineering.
Ultimately, it's up to you to decide if these topics are scientifically and morally sound.
Thank you for your time.
And those are the stone cold facts.
See you in Rainbow, the donor.